Lachie, how are you, brother?
Feeling good, mate. Happy to be here.
Mate, it's good to have you. I've been excited for this one because I've had a few artists on over the years, but it's always few and far in between, and I find the mind of an artist interesting. You know, the way that creativity works for you, the way that you pour emotion, experiences into music. Sort of, how did this all start for you?
Yeah, it's funny you say that with the emotion because for me, I wasn't a songwriter early days when I was playing music. I'd just sing cover songs and strum around on my ukulele early days, and went through a bit of an experience with my friend who passed away through suicide, and that was tough as a 15-year-old, and I started writing songs because of that. I wrote my first song about him just because there was so much on my mind, and I was just thinking in my head, what if I put this into a song? I've never tried it before, and I ended up posting like the song that I wrote onto Facebook, and people responded well, and were sending me really lovely messages. So from there, I was kind of like, well, that's cool that it had that response, and it also made me feel good just putting my feelings out there in a song. So I continued to write from there and kind of spiraled into the career that it is.
When you say that you use that pain to write a song and use that song as a way to express how you felt, did it look like a song when you wrote it out, or did it just feel like you were dumping what you felt and had been experiencing on paper, and then it kind of found its shape in a song?
Yeah, it's funny. I approach my songwriting different depending on the situation. Sometimes I'll just write a couple of pages into my journal and turn it into a song after I've got everything out and find the themes within the journal. But for that one, I was just playing guitar, and I was just, obviously pretty upset, and just started singing as if I was singing to him, which, I don't do a lot of that now, but at the time I just had so much to say, and I just started singing about it, and it sort of naturally formed into a song. I can't exactly remember the song. It probably wasn't very good if I was to look back on it, but I knew that could be a way from there on to express myself. And of early days as a youngster, I wasn't good at talking about my feelings. It was much harder to have a conversation about how I was feeling as opposed to putting it into a song and singing about it.
What do you think it is about music and performance that makes it easier to say what's hard to be said in conversation?
I think, I mean, not to say that songs are vague, but, a lot of the times, I guess you're telling your story, but you're not going into super specifics of what's happened, and people take their own kind of versions of what that song means. So it almost feels a little bit easier to put it out there, as if, people know that you wrote the song, but they don't exactly know what you were going through. So maybe it's a little bit easier. You don't have to be quite as vulnerable as just talking and speaking to someone about it. But I think also just because I love singing, I love everything about music. So for me, it seems the more natural way to put these things out there, as opposed to just standing or sitting next to someone and having that conversation.
If you think about that first song and what you were trying to say, I know you said you can't remember every word, but maybe you can remember and place the feeling. Like, what was the feeling that you were kind of emoting through the music?
Yeah, I mean, I know how I was feeling at that time, and it was hard not to put blame onto myself and regret of things that I didn't do to help the situation, which is a tough thing to do as a 15, 16-year-old, to take that blame for someone else's struggles that they've gone through. But yeah, it was the first experience I'd had with anything mental health and suicide related. So it was a big shock to me, and I think a lot of us, he was one of my best mates, and a lot of us took a bit of the blame because, you always think about what you could have said or what you could have done more to help them. So if I could think back to that, I'm guessing the song would be, about that, and just wishing that I said more to him, and wishing that I could have done more to still have him around. Yeah.
That's a hard burden to carry, isn't it? Because, you mentioned as a 15, 16-year-old, that's a lot of responsibility. I'm 28 now. I think about, if I was in that situation, which it's even hard to imagine, but you can empathise with the situation. And you think, how does one deal with that in the wake of a loss? Very challenging.
Yeah, it is. And, I had role models in my life, one being my dad, who was there for me throughout that whole time, who wanted to make it clear to me that wasn't the case, as much as I was beating myself up about it. I had people like that to tell me that, I was a good friend, and although I was struggling with that concept, because you feel like if you were a good friend that wouldn't have happened. But, I just didn't know what these struggles were, and what depression was, and what really, mental health could turn into. As a young kid, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Whereas now you understand that this is an illness. It's a disease that someone carries, and if they do get into those spirals of thoughts and feelings, sometimes you can be the best mate you can, but they're going through these things whether you like it or not, and yeah, it's a pretty tough thing to try and stop.
I'm sure we'll talk about mental health a little bit more towards the end of the pod. I know we're sort of talking about this younger period of your life right now, so I want to spend a little bit of time there, because I always find it interesting as to the person I'm sitting in front of today, who you and I have just met for the first time over I had a chicken roll, you had a pork roll, Ray's sitting over there on the bed chilling, and we've just had the opportunity to sort of get to know each other. But I'm always curious as to how childhood and early experience, where we usually, if we grow up in a safe and loving environment, feel free to express ourselves and kind of be who we are, how that creates the human that you are today, or at least influences it. Like, were you very similar as a kid, or how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, I would say that. I had a very loving family and two older sisters that, maybe at the time gave me a bit of a hard time, and I was a younger brother, so they could easily pick on me and do all the normal things that older siblings do. But yeah, for the most part, my family was super loving, super, I guess, anything that I wanted to try and do as a young kid. I played every sport there was, and was always trying different things. I'd bought a ukulele to learn, and there was just a lot of random things that I was trying as a young kid, and my parents were always supportive of that, same as my sisters. So yeah, I definitely was lucky to grow up in a household that just kind of fostered that creativity and that freedom to go and do the things that just I wanted to do and loved at the time, which as it went on was, made it a lot easier for me to try and go down these rabbit holes of these different pursuits, which eventually led me to music.
It's a special way to grow up, isn't it? Because I almost think, hearing you say that, I relate to it in the sense that super loving and supporting family who kind of encouraged me in the sense that I could be or do anything I wanted to do. Yeah. And, that creates dreams like, I want to be Batman, then you want to be Brad Fittler, then, you have all these evolutions and stages through your life where you feel encouraged enough and you have a foundational belief that you can achieve those things. Yep. And some people would call that delusion, or, people would call it naivety. But I think it's special because it encourages you as you enter adulthood and opportunities start to present themselves to take things with a leap of faith. Yeah. Like, when do you first realise that you had a singing voice?
Well, my dad's side of the family, they were all very musical. My grandpa, who has since passed, he was in a Celtic band, and every time I'd go to Adelaide, which is where they were all from, it would be a very musical household, and even just singing Happy Birthday, it was always in the right key, and we had 3 different versions of Happy Birthday that we'd sing for someone, and actually maybe there was 4, because the last one was conducting Happy Birthday.
Okay.
So whoever's birthday would conduct everyone as a choir, and these sort of things where it's very much normal for everyone to just sing and be reasonably good at it. So I guess I was around that, so giving it a shot as a 10 to 13-year-old, and then, like I said, got my first ukulele around 13, and again, was just around people that could help me through that and jam along to it, and eventually led to a guitar and singing more with the family, but then outside of that at school, and when I was 18, started playing at pubs and just became obsessed with it. Yeah.
Were your first experiences playing outside of the family home positive? Like, was it received well by audiences?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to start at the start, it's like even those first few family performances where I was like, I want to sing you guys a song. It probably wasn't like that. It was probably go get you like a ukulele and sing us a song. And I was so scared to do that, just to sing in front of my parents and my sisters. Although we'd sing a lot as a family in Adelaide, just standing up there by myself and
spotlights on you.
Spotlights on. That was just terrifying. I think back to it and just how nervous I was just to sing to those 4 people in my family. But in terms of bigger gigs, when I was 18, played at my first proper gig in Mornington, from where I'm from, and I had, at the time, I was playing footy, and I had lots of the footy boys come down to the pub, and I was just dreading it, just thinking, oh God, what are they gonna do to me? Thinking they're gonna bring stuff to throw me up on stage or something like that. But they just loved it. It was so different for someone from a footy club to go up there and sing songs and be okay. Again, if I'm to look at videos of this, I'll probably scream at how bad it was. But at the time, it was okay, and they were just so supportive. And I think, there was lots of these little moments where my perception of what it would be like was totally different to the actual outcome. You get so in your head about what it's going to be like before it even happens, and it can almost stop you from doing it. But I'm just glad I pushed through and knew that it was something that I loved, because every time I played in front of new people, whether it was the footy boys or people from school, it was just a great response, and people just going, go get it, which I know there's probably people out there that don't have that same experience. So I am very grateful looking back, and that's how it was.
It's interesting, right? Because you're obviously supremely talented and you've got an incredible voice, but that doesn't mean that you can't be subject to criticism at some stage, right? Because we spoke about it before. Art is subjective. Mm-hmm. It's up to you whether you like it or not. And we don't always like everything, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone has different taste. And I wonder, did you experience any criticism in those early years before you stepped into a very public arena like The Voice, where it's now millions of opinions?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I really remember any moments where I was kind of copying it from anyone. I think maybe I was lucky to, I'm not that old, but growing up at 15, 16, the internet wasn't what it is now. And I think people probably weren't that comfortable to just, trash someone online just at a passing video, where you've got all your friends usually on your Facebook, and that's where I first started posting videos, and I don't think it got too far outside of that circle. Whereas now you can post something and it will reach someone on the other side of the world that you've never heard of in your life, and they don't know anything about you, and they'll just put up a comment to say something nasty about you for the sake of it. So I think I was lucky in that sense that the internet was a different beast, and I just had very supportive people around me. Good bunch of friends, went to a good school with good people, and very lucky to just get support all the way through.
So when you decide to go on The Voice, it's a big decision, because I think I remember hearing you say with the Dawson D boys that you went to apply. They were like, maybe a little bit too young, figure yourself out, come back. So you go back at 23 years of age?
Yeah, 22, 23, yep.
Yeah, and so obviously you start to know a little bit more about yourself, but still it's, at 23 you think, I'm fucking grown up. Like, I know myself. But you really don't yet.
No, you don't.
So how was that experience as a young man stepping in front of the nation on a popular series at the time? You know, it still is. And having so many eyeballs on you and starting to think about if this is even the case, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but this could be a career move.
Yeah, I mean, I always had in my mind that I wanted this to be my career, even before going on the show. And, you know, that's why I sort of, after not making it through at 18, wanted to just do it on my own terms. And, you know, I was getting asked to go back on the Voice and audition again. And I just, you know, for that 5 years kept saying no, because I really wanted to do the right things and take the right steps to make this a career. And, you know, I'd heard a few things about, I guess, how people can look at people that go on The Voice, and maybe as if it's the easy route to go. But yeah, I just wanted to take the right steps to make this a lasting career, because I just, and you see it all the time, how brutal of an industry it can be and how much it can just chew you up and spit you out. So I wanted to just get everything in order, work out the artist I wanted to be, write enough songs to feel comfortable in that space and the genre that I was doing. And yeah, eventually I felt comfortable enough to give The Voice a crack, knowing that I was going to be strong in what I wanted to gain from it.
It's interesting. You just mentioned that maybe some people have the opinion that The Voice is the easy route to a music platform. Is that just something that comes with, I guess, in any space, there's what people, maybe I don't know what the term for it would be, but maybe the purist would say that, like, oh, that's not the way that it used to be done, so like it's a little bit too mainstream. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, it is. And again, this could be something that, you know, I'm making up. But just from what I've seen and the conversations I've had, there has been a bit of a kind of negative connotation on people that go on these shows, as if, you know, they can't kind of do it on their own just by writing good songs. They have to go on these TV shows, and maybe they don't think they're as legit of an artist because they're just a singer on a show and they've gained lots of popularity from that show. Which, you know, to a certain degree, I guess I can understand why it looks that way, but you don't know what people have done before that they've gone on the show. You've just seen them pop up on TV in that moment, and then they start doing well, but you don't know that, you know, I'd done hundreds, if not 1,000 gigs before I first went up onto the Voice stage, and I'd written, you know, so many songs before I'd done that. I just decided that I wanted to use this platform to try and push me further than what I was at the time. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for my experience and I absolutely loved it, but there's people that have different opinions on it for sure.
I would even think though that, like, in any industry you'd leverage the opportunities that are at hand, especially if it feels like it's a fit for you. And I think, you know, they're interesting views, aren't they? Because you hear people say that in every space. You know, I remember Matthew McConaughey in his book Green Light spoke about being at film school and, like, coming back from the weekend off, and he goes back into class and the teacher asks, you know, what movies did everyone watch over the weekend? And he's like, I'd been to the cinema to watch the blockbuster. And he's like, and I remember all kind of the real film school kids who are like kind of indie and in that space who are like, fuck that, man. Like, you know, what are you watching the blockbusters and the mainstream for? You got to go watch this little independent show. And he's like, nah, fuck you for saying it's not cool because it's mainstream. Like, if it's something that you enjoy and you think it's an opportunity for you, why shouldn't you take it? Yeah. You know, and I think providing that you're not crossing moral barriers and, you know, disregarding your moral code and your values are intact. Yeah. You know, why not platform yourself for an opportunity to share your voice and your music with the nation? Yeah. I think it's a silly view to take in any industry.
I think so too. And I think people are quick to forget some of the artists that have come from TV shows and what they've been able to achieve off the back of those. And, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to have a career and put out music so much good music that people forget that, I was on a TV show once upon a time. So that's the goal. But you look at people like, One Direction and all the stars that have come from that, Harry Styles and Callum Scott, and more recently Benson Boone, who was on Idol. And you don't think of Benson Boone now as someone who was on American Idol. He's the guy that wrote a song that was worldwide. So yeah, I think it comes down to what you can achieve after the show as well, to kind of prove yourself a little bit, to say, I'm not just a guy that went on a TV show. I can write songs and make a career of it. So that's what I plan to do. Yeah.
So let's talk grand final evening. You hear your name called out. It's special. It's exciting. I can imagine it feels like a dream come true and something you've potentially envisioned throughout the course of the process. In that moment, what ideas do you have for what the future will look like, and which of those ideas have come to fruition and which of those have been maybe misconceptions?
Yeah, to be honest, it was a whirlwind, and I just knew that I wanted to get to work straight away. I wanted to write as many songs as possible and just get out there and find as many opportunities as I could. I think I probably underestimated how difficult it would be. I think there was a lot of barriers that I didn't think would be there, and underestimated the time that it takes to really put the work in and start making things happen. So that was a big learning curve for me, just even down to how long it takes to put an EP together. 6 songs, and it can take a year to put that all together and put it out, which I probably didn't see coming. I probably thought, give me a couple of months and we'll put it out, and it's been 2 years now, and I've put out maybe 7 or 8 songs. So I think you've got to be patient. But I just knew I wanted to work hard, and I was going to work hard regardless of what happened, and that's still the case now, which I'm glad I've stuck to that, and I'm going to keep going and keep putting out good songs.
What's your process like? You spoke about writing there and creating an EP, 7 or 8 songs. When you sit down to write, is it different every time? Do you have a strategy that's worked for you, and you've struck gold before, so you go back to it?
Well, I was lucky enough to meet some cool collaborators after the show and be introduced to some cool producers and songwriters. So I've been working with the Mac Brothers for pretty much all my songs over the last 2 years, and we struck gold together. Like, it was one of the first introduction I had from my management, sort of introducing me to some people I could work with, and the first time we met, it was just sort of that instant connection where you go, yeah, we're going to have some fun. And, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to make good music together. We just knew we got along and shared a lot of the same values. So we worked together for a couple of weeks at the start and just wrote some of my favourite songs, in that first 2 weeks of meeting each other. And so 2 years later, we've still got that relationship, and I still make all my music with them, which is incredible. So we just, I'll go up to Sydney and go down there from Avoca Beach, and beautiful area, and we'll just spend a couple of weeks just sitting in a room together, just bouncing off each other, playing guitar, singing along until we hit something that we like. And yeah, it's a very special feeling when you run into these little moments of songs where you go, that's a really special moment of that song. Let's build on that.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer, and maybe this is and or, do you prefer writing or performing?
I think performing is almost like your reward of the songwriting. I feel like the songwriting and the creation of the songs is almost the hard work. And the performing is just the fun bit where you get to, go and put on a show for people. If I was to compare it to footy, which, I used to be a footy player, it's like the pre-season training and all the training sessions is is the writing and the creating of the song, and then the grand final is that performance and singing live, which is always the fun bit, you know. So they're very different, and I probably love them both equally because, like I said, you have these moments in a songwriting session, and it's funny, you can work all day. So we've had days where we'll write for 10, 12 hours in the day and just be battling and not get a song, and you just get so frustrated and you're almost ready to quit and just be like, I hate music. And then all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, you've written one of your favorite songs, and you're just like, what the hell just happened? But we had to do that whole 10 to 12 hours of shit and, you know, battling to get this little moment at the end of the day where you go, all right, I like music. Like, this is fun. I love songwriting. So I think that is the cool part about songwriting. It can be so brutal that when you get those moments, they're just so special. But the performing is just, something completely different, where you get to see people's eyes light up when you sing a song that you wrote, and it's very special. Yeah.
I guess creativity doesn't really play by the rules, does it?
No, it's just so random. Like I said, we've had days where we write 4 songs in a day, and then we've got days where we don't write a song at all, and you just, for whatever reason, it's like, it's just not your day, and you just got to keep chipping away because eventually something's going to spark and you're going to find something.
What do you think if you think about a good writing and working relationship, like you mentioned the Mac brothers, is that a healthy balance of being able to challenge each other, being able to question each other?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that look like? Because I think, you know, most people from a working capacity will have not worked creatively like this. I'm sure there's potentially artists and creatives who are listening to this or watching this, but I wonder what that balance looks like and how you maintain the strength of relationship in one of those kind of work environments.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as I was saying, with the connection straight away with them, a part of that was just feeling comfortable around them. Songwriting can be such a vulnerable thing to do, and you have to talk about some of the hardest things you've gone through to get some of the most special songs. So honesty is massive with the people that you work with, just being able to be completely open with each other. And yeah, I mean, it comes down to working with someone enough, but eventually you become pretty brutal with each other in terms of, you've got to know when to tell someone, that's going down the wrong path. That's a shit idea. Yeah. And when you go, no, let's keep going with that. So yeah, there's massive honesty between us, and I think you have to be on the same page with that person or those people that you're working with. A lot of the times, I'll just be telling a story or talking about something that happened, and not necessarily trying to write a song, like just hanging out with these blokes, Andy and Tom, and all of a sudden, you know, they'll just stop me and be like, what did you say? And I'll say it again. They'll be like, let's write about that. And I was like, I didn't realize you were like dissecting me, you know? So it's, I think you got to have that connection with someone and just be super open and honest, and be ready to be brutal with each other and just say, yeah, that's not worth the time to spend on that. Let's move on. And yeah, and on top of that, you got to have fun. Like, you've got to be just willing to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, and be able to get creative and try different things, because that's when you come up with some pretty cool stuff.
So I'm going to say that I was maybe one of the most naive humans in the world who, until a couple years ago, just thought that all artists wrote their own songs. You know, like, it's kind of just the assumption you have. You hear an artist put out a body of work as a younger person, and you think that's their song, they must have written it. And as a kid, because I would say, creative and enjoyed that, you know, I remember me, my sister and my little cousin would create little bands at home, and you'd perform for the family, and musically, absolutely no inclination or talent. Yeah. But just enjoyed like being creative, and so you'd write songs and you just think that everyone does that. But it's actually a dime a dozen of artists who just go and have songs written for them, which is nothing wrong with that, right?
Yep.
But you obviously like writing stuff that you get to then perform. Yep. When you think about when you think about like how unique that is, and the fact that it takes a lot of effort and time to do that, as you've just mentioned, do you almost then see living your life and having new experiences as just one big writing project? Because you kind of need to be out there living your life, doing different stuff to inform the music, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a period of my life not that long ago where, I was sort of maybe being a hermit crab, to say, and just sort of staying within my box and being a bit of a homeboy, just doing the things that I needed to do to get by. And yeah, you slowly realize that you're not going to write very good songs when you're not going out and living a life full of different experiences. So yeah, it's definitely has a lot to do with it, because yeah, at the end of the day, if you're not going out and experiencing things, you're not going to be able to write songs about your own life, which is what I like to do. I never want to be a person that's writing things that don't mean anything to me, or just coming up with fake stories, which people do, and that's a part of being creative, but it's not the way that I like to do it with my music. So yeah, I definitely have to go out there and experience things. I'm not one of those people that will purposely go and get my heart broken just to write songs, but if that's to come up, I am going to write songs about it, So I think it is part of that. You're always, as a songwriter, you're always trying to think about those moments. Even if you're having a conversation, I can't lie to say that I haven't thought about pulling out my notes and writing down something that someone said to me there and then, because it might be a good song title. But yeah, you're always thinking about it. But I would say, yeah, you have to go and live a eventful life to come up with some cool songs.
I heard Zach Bryan say it on Rogan's podcast. He said that when you're in a tour of just performing, and you're just performing night after night after night, and it's tour bus, perform, get some food, have a recovery day, do the same thing again, you get to the end of that 6 months and realise that you've just relived the same night over and over again, and you've got nothing new to write about.
Yep.
So yeah, I can imagine it would be a challenge to think about how you continue to inform your own creativity and inspire it.
Yeah.
And lean into that.
Yeah, I think it's funny because you can always write a song. Like you can push yourself to write a song about anything. If I was to, sit in the corner of this room and stare at the curtain, I could still come up with a song. It just may not be the best song I've ever written because, there's not a lot of substance to it. But yeah, there's always things to write about. But I think the most important songs I've written and the ones I've loved the most have come from either a pretty heavy experience I've gone through, or a time in my life where there was a lot going on. Yeah.
I just mentioned before, creativity doesn't play by the rules, but to potentially contradict that, have you got it down to a science in any way, shape or form in which you can kind of measure the metrics of what a successful song would look like? In the sense, let me give you an example here. Like, could you link in any way effort and time spent to how good the song will be? Or is it just like effort doesn't play a part at all? Sometimes it's seamless.
I would say that the more I experience the music industry and see the songs that do well, and even for my own songs, the more I become confused as to what is going to do well, which is, why I think it's so important to be consistent and to try and put out as much music as possible. I say that, and I haven't released a song for a year, but I truly think that you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to be putting out songs to have the potential of one of them doing really well. But yeah, I personally can't pick it with my own songs, let alone all the other ones being released. But I just want to put out songs that I really connect with and that I love, because then it's never going to be a failure for me, regardless of who listens to it. I know that I love that work that I'm putting out. I had a good time writing it, and it means something to me, so I can kind of stand on that merit and it's never going to be a failure to me, regardless of how many streams it gets or what happens with the song. I'm going to be proud of it. But yeah, I think you've just got to keep putting them out, and eventually, you know, one's gonna do well.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there. I think it's true for any pursuit in life. If it feels honest and it feels authentic and special to you, then you can. I think Harry Styles said it on a podcast with Zane Lowe. He said, if you're happy doing what you're doing, then nobody can tell you that you're not a success. I think it's like a beautiful message to consider, regardless of what you do in life. But I was just thinking then, like, if you think about the industry as a whole, and you sort of mentioned the industry in that piece, and it's hard to pick what's going to do well because it's changing so rapidly, probably more rapidly than ever, right? Because of social media and access and discoverability now. Yeah. But I wonder, like, what is the balance between brand and talent? Because I think that there's and like, let me say this as a complete outsider who has no authority to speak on this. I know there's a few artists that you like that if I think about them as artists, like you mentioned Dean Lewis before, I still believe that Dean Lewis's talent is bigger than his brand at the moment. And what I mean by that is if you went around the world, I think less people would know who Dean Lewis is. And if you played the same amount of people who you asked, like, do you know who this guy is? If you played them a bit of his music and they heard his voice, you'd go, oh, beautiful voice. Yeah. So his talent probably overrides his brand. But where there's artists that people know of them, but they couldn't sing one of their songs, right? Yeah. Their brand is more powerful. What is the balance of building a brand in this industry, and how important is it? And like, what role does it play in actually elevating and the discovery of the talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming more and more important as it kind of goes on with social media, and it's probably the one thing that most artists, including myself, struggle with. I think a lot of us are very talented and we know how to write a song, but it's one thing to have a good song there, and the next part of that is getting people to listen to it, which is, you know, a very, very hard thing to do with how much saturation there is of music out there now, how easy it is for people to start putting out music. So I think, we're constantly trying to find ways to be innovative with the way that we put ourselves out there in our marketing and our branding. But it is super taxing because, you know, obviously it takes a lot of brain power to think of these ideas, and you have to put yourself out there. But yeah, I definitely struggle with that part because I just love the music making process so much that it almost feels like it's taking away from that process, because you have to think about these things outside of it that, you know, we didn't necessarily sign up for. Like, I didn't get into music and start songwriting to, you know, then have to make videos and put them up on TikTok to try and get people's attention in 10 seconds. You know, I want people to listen to the whole song and connect to it. So, yeah, it's a very challenging thing, but I think you've got no choice now. You have to try and create a brand and an image and a marketing strategy behind your songs, or else your songs just won't get heard. So I think you got to evolve with the time of music and just put in that effort. But it is definitely something I'm still trying to work out, and I'm definitely not one of those people that is, you know, super comfortable in front of a camera to do these crazy things that I've seen some artists do. So you've got to find ways around that suit the person that you are and the music that you make, which for me is storytelling and just that connection. So yeah,
it's really interesting because, look, at risk of sounding like a broken record to people who consistently listen to the pod, there's a moment on a podcast with Guy Ritchie that I heard on Joe Rogan's platform where he talks about, you know, the old saying, like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Mm-hmm. He's like, don't hate the game because you're in it. Like, you've got to figure out how to make the game work for you. Mm-hmm. And I hate that little bit about the creative industry. Mm-hmm. It's similar with the pod. Yeah. You can have the best conversations, but if you don't have a brand and an image behind it and you don't know how to market yourself, nobody hears it. Yep. right? And so you have the same problem. And I often think about, I find it hard to just love the game because I just want to have good conversations and share them. But it's like, well, actually, you have to set yourself apart because, as you said, this industry is so saturated now. So, you know, when you speak about your brand being that of a storyteller, like, is there any way that you can see the industry shifting that could fit into that niche and you could elevate your brand and lean into a little opportunity that's presenting itself?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the more we go towards this kind of AI, artificial world where what we see is potentially not what's happening in real life, the more we're going to want to really try and consume real music and real people. So I think that's where, you know, hopefully I'm going to kind of stand above a lot of other people. But for me, the biggest part and the biggest thing I want to keep pushing in my music career is the live music. I think for me as a audience member watching my favorite artists, going to watch them live is always a game changer for me. You know, there's one thing listening to someone's music on Spotify and watching a video on YouTube, but to actually stand in the same room as your favorite artist or someone that you look up to and hear them absolutely nail a song that they've recorded and you go, holy shit, that was as good as the recording. That's when I become a super fan of that person and I go, they're the real deal. And, you know, I'll follow them for the rest of my life, you know, in terms of any music they put out. I go, I love him because I remember that show that I watched. So that's the sort of artist I want to be. And I think that opportunity and that space is always going to be there because people want to come out and experience those things in real life. The more that things go online and on the internet, the more that people are going to want to get out of their house and go and watch a show and watch this happen in real life. And, you know, I like to think that my show is as good as any others and as impactful as any of the other big names out there in the music world.
Speaking of live performing, if you think about the realities of music, is it true that live performances and those gigs are the only real way to make your money unless you're a global sensation like a Beyonce who gets huge streaming dollars?
Yeah, I'd definitely say that is always going to be one of the main money makers. I think there's ways to branch out. Obviously, you see a lot of artists now branching out into sponsorships and creating these collaborations with brands, which is another way to do it. But yeah, live music and touring is definitely the money maker because these big platforms, Spotify and Apple Music, are really not doing it for artists. Like you said, unless they're massive and getting 1 billion streams, you're not gonna be able to make a lot of money off these streaming services. So you've got to find ways to get out there in the live space and sell tickets and hopefully the people that come love you and they buy a piece of merch or support you in that way. That's always going to be the biggest thing you can do to keep making money. Yeah,
it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because these streaming platforms offer incredible discoverability and make it really easy for people to listen to your music, and it's really a part of a fast digitally moving world that you can have all of that on demand, but doesn't necessarily, it serves the consumers more than the artist, right?
Of course, you know, and I have Spotify, you know, so I'm one of those consumers and I love how I can be suggested songs from people I've never heard and find an artist on the other side of the world, which I wouldn't have been able to do without that. So it is a super cool innovation in music to be able to have that access. But like you said, it is that double-edged sword that now you've just got to work that little bit harder to push above all the saturation of artists out there and try and do something different so that, you know, people want to put more time and listening hours into your music.
We were speaking about it before over lunch, like as you're trying to grow a brand in this space and you're trying to find new opportunity and develop as an artist, With that comes more notoriety, and I'm sure you experienced a level of that off the back of the voice.
Yeah.
But there is potentially, with your talent and the way that you're tracking, so much more of that ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about the potential consequence of that kind of fame?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you are reminded of the consequences a lot of the time, and you know, I'm not sure when this pod will come out, but you see, just very recently with Liam from originally in One Direction, and you know, the story's not out as to what exactly happened, but yeah, you're constantly reminded of things that can go wrong in that space when, you know, and it's hard to understand what they go through and what life is like at that level. But even on the smaller scale, after I won The Voice, it was insane, the amount of, you know, just the amount of messages I got. And, you know, that next day I'm doing 25 radio interviews and 2 TV appearances all in the one day. And these people probably do that, you know, for weeks straight, every day, or months straight. And yeah, you can't imagine the toll that would take. But I'd like to think that I have that support around me to constantly keep me grounded. And it happened throughout that period of time when things were pretty nuts after The Voice, where, you know, my sisters were the ones that would bring me back down to earth and give me that normality. And my parents did the same. So I think as long as you've got a little bit of that structure and that those people around you to kind of keep your feet on the ground, I think you're going to be okay. But yeah, I can't say I haven't thought about it and been a little bit scared by the thought, because again, we do this because we love playing music, we love writing songs. The fame and the things that can come along with that are a part of it, but we don't necessarily ask for it. So yeah, it's a weird thing to think about, but I'd like to think that I've got the supports there, that it would be okay if it happened. Yeah.
I have a hard question for you.
Go for it.
Because I often think about those people who have that level of fame, like, you know, you mentioned a Liam Payne, or like any of those guys that were in One Direction, or, you know, like a Billie Eilish, someone like that, where it's Taylor Swift, where it's so crazy that you can't have a personal life, or at least it's very hard to. I often think, for all the success and the privilege of doing what they love, with any job, there's stuff that you don't love about it, right? And there's hard days, of course. But I wonder if at the end of their careers and towards the end of their lives, if they would ever look back and think, was that worth it? Like, would they ask that question? And I wonder for you, do you think that, God willing, you amount to all this success that you want in your career and your life? Do you ever think there'll be a part of you that maybe misses, you know, the opportunity to just be Lachie and walk down Mornington Peninsula with your mates and you're just in your own little world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I guess, you know, I've had that for 25 years and I've loved my life to that point. I think if you're lucky enough to be in that position where you become that well known, I think you'd constantly have to tell yourself the impact that you're having on people for the best. I think if you look at someone like a Taylor Swift, the amount of good that she's done in this world is unimaginable in terms of the spectrum of people that she would have reached and changed their lives for the better. So I think if you're able to look back on that and have that gratitude to that, it would make that whole process a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to know until you're in that space. I have no idea how I would talk to you if I was in that position and what I'd say. But I think, I'd have to constantly bring myself back to, I'm making a massive difference in this world through my music and making a lot of people happy. So if me not being able to go down to the shops is the one thing that I lose, then so be it. I've made a massive impact on the world, and I think that's what you know, a lot of people are wanting to do with the one life they have.
In saying all of that, do you think you could accept a reality in which you are waking up in the morning, putting the tie on, and the bell rings at 9 o'clock and you're in the classroom?
I don't think so. No, I don't think I can go back to being a school teacher. I think.
Does that terrify you? The fact that there's so much at stake then and you have to make this work?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to think about it too much. And the more I put in time to the music, the more I start to believe that I'm going to make it happen. But, you know, it's taking nothing away from people out there that are a school teacher and people that have these more so normal jobs. They're still making a difference, and they're still putting, you know, good things out into the world and making a difference in people's lives. So, yeah, it's not taking away from that. It's just wanting to live a life that you are super happy about and super content that you got to do that and push towards that. And, you know, I won't get that from being a school teacher. I'll get that from pursuing a music career and eventually succeeding in the way that I want to succeed.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic because I completely agree with you. I've got mates that are school teachers, and they say that it's the most noble thing they could have done with their life, and they love it.
Yep.
I've had family who have been in emergency services like police and ambulance and all that stuff, and family in sales, like plenty of different jobs, who love it and get the kick from it. But when you've experienced that little bit of fucking fire in the belly that you get from doing your thing, the thing that you love, very hard to think about a world in which you don't get to do that.
Yeah, and it's that weird thing that you almost chase that uncomfortable feeling. You know, I hate when I start to feel comfortable or start to feel like things are stagnant or I'm not doing as much as I could. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't make me feel good. My mental health starts to kind of deteriorate when I notice that I'm being stagnant or not pushing myself to, you know, a level that I'm uncomfortable. So I think for me, if I was to be a PE teacher, that's exactly what that would be. It would be a comfortable life that I sort of settle in and repeat the same day and the same year, sort of teaching the same things. Whereas music for me is just constantly giving me these challenges. And, you know, not to say I love when things don't work out, but I think that's the beauty about life is that when things go wrong, you just find a way to push through and you know, come up with different ways to get through that. And then you can look back at those struggles and when things didn't go right, and it makes it all the better when things start going well. So yeah, I couldn't see myself being comfortable as a PE teacher, and I just want to keep pushing in this music space and challenging myself to get better.
I think to a degree, you just mentioned there how important the challenges are. I think for everybody in some degree, chaos is your ally. Like the more challenges you face, whether they are chosen challenges or challenges that unwillingly forced upon you, the growth you have in your character and your spirit builds a level of confidence and competency to take bigger steps in life. And I think that's really important in your space, right? And you know, I think it's important for anyone, but if you want to develop a career in the arts, you need a whole lot of that. You know, you spoke about your mental health there. I wonder, in a space that is so dynamic and ever changing, like how you maintain good mental health and what you've learned about yourself over the course of the last couple of years on this little artist journey. Yeah,
I've probably like I said before, the biggest thing for me is keeping busy and working towards the goals that I set for myself, which, you know, there was probably a period there where I was relying on other people, whether that be label or management, to, you know, get these things done or these roles filled. and that sort of put me in a spot where I felt like I wasn't doing enough, or I was stagnated in a certain spot. So I think I've learnt that I've just got to keep putting in work, whether that be, you know, picking up my guitar more times a day to learn different things on the guitar, or setting aside an extra half an hour a day to work on my singing techniques. It's these little things that you can do to get to an end of the day and go, today I achieved something and I'm better than I was yesterday, and I'm working towards a goal that I've set out for myself. So I think that's when I'm in the best mental space. I think if I can think back to times when it was getting rough and I went through some times of getting pretty bad anxiety, and that was because things felt like they were just standing still, and it was because I wasn't doing the things I needed to do to progress my career, and was potentially pointing the finger at these people around me, thinking that they should be doing something to help me or give me opportunities, where in reality I'm the one that is in charge of that, and I'm the one that has to go out and make this happen. So that's sort of when I feel at my best, and you know, my mental health is feeling good.
I love it, brother. It's been so nice to sit here and talk. You're on the, is it second last show of the tour?
Yes.
How are you feeling
Sydney.
about tonight?
Feeling good. I'm feeling like I want a sip of that water. I probably should have been sipping it on the way through, but we've got a couple of hours before the show. So, no, I'm super pumped, and being on this tour with Cap Carter has been awesome, and I've been exposed to a different fan base. It's the first time I've sung for people that potentially don't know who I am, which is a challenging task, but has just been so much fun. Like, I just want to play shows every single night. Yeah.
I'm excited for you, man. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll make sure that everywhere that people can find you, support you, get around your music, linked in the show notes. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you, mate. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.